All right, I turn on the recording now. So all the session is recorded at the moment. And I would like, so let's start the session, guys. So as I click the recording button, first of all, I would like to thank everybody who is joining my session or not joined yet. It's and going to watch it probably later on my YouTube channel, Cloud Marathoner. Welcome to Global Azure 2022. This event's actually very huge event where you have hundreds of sessions, maybe like close to 500. But this one is special because I'm doing this session, what is new in Azure Bicep language, in collaboration with the Cloud Launch and Learn, where I'm also a core team member, and we are hosting weekly uh, sessions on cloud technology, mostly Azure and different aspects of that. So please, check this out later on. All right, let's kick the session and go. Here you can find some information about my profile. I'm a Microsoft MVP and MCT. I am also on social platforms. Just type my name, you would find me. And there's a Twitter handle on the left, and plus in the bottom you can find my blog post, thecloudmarathoner.com. I also have Cloud Marathoner a YouTube channel, which I'm trying to revive. I don't have much videos there, but over time I'm planning to put more. I'm currently Cloud Architect Manager for T-Rex Solutions, and I'm well versed. And if you need any help with healthcare data standards, I have quite a good experience on that, close to 12 years, and I'm a frequent contributor to different Azure and Microsoft events, as you see on the slide. All right, next, let's look into what we are going to cover today. First of all, we'll start with a very brief introduction on what is Azure Bicep and why it is important to learn. Secondly, we'll look into different ways how Bicep language can help you. And then we'll look into evolution and history, how this language is evolving, because Azure Bicep is infrastructure as a code, and it actually, believe it or not, it started almost like 2 years ago with Ignite announcement made by Brendan Burns. And now it's actually getting more mature and coming to the point where hopefully this year it's going to be a GA. It's going to get its version 1.0. Next, we'll look into updates on Azure Bicep. Here I will focus mostly on updates that happen on the version 0.5 and 0.6, which actually happen during the March, April, and some of them in the May months. And then we'll look into certain demos so that you can get some good grasp of how to use those features and what are the main points that you need to be aware about when you're implementing Azure Bicep. All right. First, Azure Bicep is a domain specific language. What it means that you can use Azure Bicep only on Microsoft Azure platform. You cannot, currently it doesn't support provisioning and management of resources on different cloud solution platforms. It Azure Bicep is a transparent abstraction over ARM template, meaning that whatever you can run on ARM template, you can also run on Bicep language because it transpiles into the ARM templates. And then, of course, all of them get executed on REST API on ARM layer that we have in Azure. And the whole idea. Hey, welcome, Howard. I already started the session, but let me know if you have any questions in between. Okay.
Yeah, questions. Okay.
All right. And
All
I'm
right.
recording the session so that you're aware. All right. Okay. So basically, Azure Bicep is a domain-specific language. It is something that's supposed to be that's supporting the Microsoft Azure cloud infrastructure, and you can manage and deploy your resources there. in much easier way than you would have to do that on this ARM template. And ARM template is Azure Resource Manager templates, which has been there for a while to manage Azure resources with JSON declarations. And I will show how it look like. And finally, the Bicep code, Azure Bicep code, which is basically written in a clean way to declare your Azure resources and infrastructure, get transpiled, it get compiled basically into ARM templates, into those JSON files. And to look into some examples on that, right? So I don't want just show it. So let me bring this Azure repo. All right, and what it is, this repo actually is going to be accessible through the it's available, of course, it's because an Azure repo, it's a GitHub repo. You can access that actually if you navigate to GitHub. Let me show you how you can get it. So if you navigate to GitHub and put my, and here it is. So basically all the demonstrations that you would see here, let me just make it a little bigger so it's easier to see what I'm trying to show. So basically what you need to do here is navigate to this, GitHub page. And then if you scroll down, you would see that we have this Learn Bicep here. Okay. Learn Bicep. So if you go there and click on it, all the code that I'm going to demonstrate, they are all here in this Bicep, in this GitHub repo. I also have Azure Bicep blog posts, which are explaining how to do certain things based on the code samples that I have here. Okay, so it's intended basically to help you to get not just to get to learn about Azure Bicep, not just the simple things, not just the beginner stuff, but also some advanced things in terms of setting your parent-child resources, setting your Azure Key Vault, and using this secure approach while managing your Azure resources. Okay, so this is the, if you never use this repo, please go and visit that. You can also start and fork it. Every little help actually helps. All right, so let me go back to the Visual Studio Code. I hope everybody can see it well. So here, what I'm going to do is just to demonstrate that Azure Bicep is basically Azure Bicep is a domain-specific language, all right, that you can easily go ahead and use. So for example, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a simple storage file, or let's actually, this is not a simple one. This doesn't look simple, I would say. I will create something from scratch, okay? So I'm going to create a empty .bicep. So as you see, here when I put the bicep extension, you get this logo, right? The reason why you are getting this logo is because I have installed the bicep extension. And if you don't have it, I would suggest to install that. This is the Bicep extension, okay, which is actually created by Microsoft Team. And this is very useful, and I would highly recommend to go and install that if you are going to deal with Bicep code, okay? So if you have it, great. If you don't, then you know where to get it. Empty Bicep, as you see, there's nothing here, right, guys? There's nothing here. There's a way how you can actually, let me go to terminal. So here, as it is empty, as you all see, what I'm going to do is basically, I'm going to show how this thing get transpiled, basically compiled into ARM template, which is Azure Resource Manager template. And to do that, you have two ways to do it. Before there was only a command way, but now you can have a right click. So for example, if you want to compile this, you can use either this right click and say build bicep file. Okay, let's do that. What it should do, it should produce empty.json file in addition to what we have now. So let's do that, build bicep file. And as you see, it actually built this empty JSON file, and I'm going to compare them now so you can see it. So let's do this. All right. So as you see, on the left side here, what we have is, let me take this out. On the left side, it's empty file. There's nothing there. But on the right side, we have a compiled version of empty Bicep file into JSON, which actually represents a schema of this ARM template. Okay. Then it represents the metadata, which is basically says what Bicep language version was used and its hashtag. And then what we have is resources. But because we have no resources here on the left, there's no Azure resources. That's why we have empty array here. Now, I hope this demonstrates the transpilation, but it doesn't bring too much sense, right? Because it's just empty file. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete this empty JSON in a way that's simple to manage. And what we are going to do, I'm going to take another storage account. Let's take this storage Bicep. And this is basically already a Bicep file where we have some parameters, right? We see that let me make it a little bigger so it's easier to see. Let me know if you guys see it well. You can make a thumbs up or something so I know everything is good. So here, what I did, I navigated to the modules. Thank you, Howard. I navigated into modules folder and I clicked on storage.bicep file, which is all of this code is on my GitHub repo. Okay. So now, once I open this storage.bicep file, you see that it has 3 parameters here. Parameter for storage name, location, environment name. Then we have storage account SKU name variable and account name variable, which is a transpiled. This is the way how you can basically concatenate certain strings. Okay. And then what I have here is I have one storage account here that actually creates a storage account with the name that's defined here as an account name. And then I have a test storage, another storage account name, it's Azure Storage, that has a name test SDG school 0956. So why I'm showing that is because we are going to use this Bicep file to this storage.bicep to generate ARM template. Basically, it's a representation as ARM JSON template, and so that you can see what are the similarities and why it is actually easily compiled into ARM template. Okay, so and why I'm mentioning ARM template is because, let me show it on the slide before moving too much forward, because Bicep language, as I mentioned, it's abstraction over ARM templates. Okay, so Bicep language actually get compiled into ARM template, then it's actually passed to the Azure Resource Manager layer where the resources are provisioned based on the defined structure that is sent to Azure Resource Manager. Okay, that's the whole reason here why I'm showing. And before going to the why Bicep language, let me actually show you how we are going to compile it. So here we have, again, we have a storage Bicep file that has 3 parameters, 2 variables. We have 2 storage accounts. One of them has a fixed name. Another one is going to get the name from the storage name, right? Plus environment name. So it's going to, as environment here is a dev, so it's going to get a standard LRS because this is not the prod. So we have here Turner operator that makes conditional decision. And you see that first storage account is going to have a tag that's defined here. Okay, let's do the compilation of that. But this time, so we have 2 ways to compile it, right? If you remember. So first one is you can right click and say build Bicep file. And what it would do is it will go to this storage.bicep. Okay, it will generate a storage.json representation here. Okay, you just right click, do this, it will happen. Another way is to use your command line. And to use the command line, you need to type AZ Bicep. And of course, the Azure CLI needs to be installed. And you also can check the version, by typing AZ Bicep version here, like this, so that you would know which version of Bicep you are running. Let's run this command shortly. And in our case, as you see here, we are running we are running this latest 0.6 version, 0.1. So why I put this one is just to make sure that our Azure Bicep actually is enabled and it's functional. Now I'm going to compile this storage.bicep into ARM template, which should give me storage.json file. Okay, let's do that. To compile, you would say az bicep, then you would type build. That's the command to do that. Then you put -f for the location of the file, and we know that it's located under the modules folder. And I'm using tab here, and Visual Studio Code actually helps me to navigate to the modules folder, and then I'm going to type the storage.bicep file name. Okay, now once we press on enter, the compilation will start from our command line. You would get this yellow warning if you have bicep config.json, which I'm going to share a video about that because I already made a presentation on it, so that you can get more understanding how you set up your bicep configuration on your laptop, on the environment where you are running that. Okay, so now storage dot, as you see here on the left, all right, it's over here actually. Storage.json file has been created. Let's click on it. I'm going to take out my double click on it. And of course, I need to double click. So here on the right side, I have JSON file. So let's split the screen and have a little bit more real estate to see what's going on here. And here, if we compare with the left, on the left side, we have bicep code, right? On the right side, we have the ARM template representation of that. So we know that we have 3 parameters. So let's look at it. So we have parameters here. We have variables. We have 2 resources. And this is good because we have 2 resources on our bicep file here on the left. And we have 3 parameters and 2 variables. If you look into parameters, you would see that storage name, location, and environment. All of these 3 are here. And then we have 2 variables defined: storage account name SKU, storage account SKU name, and we have account name. So both are here. Good. Then we have a resource, right? So we have here a first resource that has a name which is coming from account name, right? And this is defined here is this variable account name. Okay, and we have a tag. As you see, resource here has a tag, and the same resource has a tag here. Okay, so it's a one-to-one representation. And finally, second storage account. Oops, let me scroll down. And here, all right, good. So here we have a resource name as something ending with 0956. We have same naming here, 0956. Location name is coming from the parameter. The same thing actually happens here. And all the SKU name and the type of the storage are same. All right. So as you see, it's actually one-to-one compilation, but that's all good. However, it doesn't give us anything, right? So at this moment, what we have is we looked into the, let me delete this JSON file because you don't need it anymore. At this moment, we looked into the different things, and now let me go back to the slides. Okay, so we looked into the ARM template, we looked into its relationship, and in terms of why to use, after showing why to use Bicep language, we'll jump into how you can go ahead and deploy that into your Azure subscription. Okay, so to do that, first of all, there are like 10 reasons why I would suggest you to invest in infrastructure as code and learn the Bicep language if your primary deployment, if your primary deployment of resources go to the Microsoft Azure environment. First of all, it's easy to understand and maintain. As you see, when we looked into the code on Bicep language and as well as on the JSON ARM representation, it was much easier to understand what's going on Bicep language. Second, it has day zero support, meaning that any updates that happen on Azure ARM template Swagger, API Swagger, and if there's any change on the Azure resources, then those updates and changes are going to be immediately available on your Bicep language API, so you can use them right away. You don't have to wait for any updates. Second, it's a transparent abstraction over ARM template. It has awesome tooling on Visual Studio Code, as you saw, some segments of that, but you will see more of these features as we progress in our demo. Then we have clean code syntax with Azure Bicep code. We have code reusability. I'm going to show you the snippets of how you can create modules and reuse them. And then we have deep integration with Azure, which is not a surprise, of course. It has a pre-flight validation, meaning that you can, before deploying your resources, you can run a test to make sure that your deployment is in a good shape and it's not going to fail halfway of the deployment. And you can also look at the changes and updates that your script is going to introduce into your Microsoft Azure environment. Bicep language, Bicep code, Azure Bicep code doesn't require any state management as the one that, for example, if you are familiar with Terraforms, you know that you have to maintain that state file. And production support, Azure Bicep has official Microsoft support. So if you have any issues, you can open a support ticket and Microsoft team is trained to help you with those issues. All right, I hope that's enough kind of reasons to make sure that you can start using the Azure Bicep. Here, what you see is basically on the right side, you have this command AZ Bicep list versions. And as you see, there was from alpha version till 0.6.1, which actually came early in the May, there was quite a bit of updates here. And it's early, again, it started as alpha in early alpha version in 2022. Any official support and official support for Microsoft Azure Bicep started from the version 0.3. Currently, the latest version is listed on the screen, and the stable version, or let's say the version 1.0, where you would not have any API changes or anything like that, will happen later this year. It's actually going to be determined. It's not 100% there. So before jumping into demos, I want to show you certain resources that you can use to basically, make your Azure Bicep skills, how you can upskill them. First of all is this awesome Azure Bicep repo that's maintained by myself and other MVPs and contributors. So please go ahead and check this one. And I can show you that briefly on here. So basically, if you go to my repo and scroll down, you will see that there is Azure, awesome Azure Bicep is here. So it has a number of resources, which are official resources from Microsoft, and you have community resources, videos, podcasts, and books. So I highly recommend to go and check it out. And also, please, fork it or start it depending on if you would like to contribute. Please open a pull request and put the resources that you find most helpful while learning the Azure Bicep. All right. Okay, that said, next thing is Azure Bicep First Look video. This is a LinkedIn learning video that is also available for you. You just need to navigate to LinkedIn and open that Azure Bicep First Look. It has been there from the last year, end of last year, but has the most of the fundamentals that you would need to learn. And please go ahead and check that. So it's Azure Bicep First Look if you want to learn about Azure Bicep. Okay, that said, I'm going to skip this bicep config file And before talking about new updates in Bicep language, I want to go ahead and deploy those resources that we actually compiled in storage account. Okay, let's do that. So to do that deployment, I'm going to go back to the file storage Bicep where we were. And because I may have this, we are going to change the name. Let's say it's a storage, and then it is global Azure. Remember, I would just say that remember that this name actually is need to be unique. Okay, this storage name, that's something that Azure requires. That storage name should be unique across the whole Microsoft Azure storage account namespace. So I'm going to put here 0507 as today's day, and then for the test storage school, I would say test SDG global Azure, and then we'll put the same here 0507, indicating today's month and the day. Okay, so we have these two things. So why I did that change, because there's a probability that I have deployed these storage account names previously, so I want to avoid anything that may cause it to collapse. So I'm going to show you now a new feature that without leaving your Azure, without leaving your vision. Let's say you are not a terminal guy, okay? So you don't want to use the terminal that much, even though it's actually recommended, and you want to deploy them using the Visual Studio Code enhancements. There's a way to do that. So you can, as you see, if you right click here, there's a way to deploy Bicep file. Let me show it. All right. So what it means that we can take this file, and if you have our Azure Microsoft Azure account set it up, and that is an extension in Visual Studio Code. It will ask us, which resource group where we want to deploy that, and it will just take this file, Bicep file, and deploy all the resources into that resource group. Okay. To show you what I mean by that is, in order to make this work, you need to make sure that you enable certain things. It's not going to work out of the box. In order to make sure that you can see this option and you can use it, what you need to do is you need to navigate to the settings, okay, and click on the settings. And then what you need to do is you need to come here, all right, this place, and make sure that under the extensions, first of all, under the extensions, you need to scroll down where you can find the Bicep here. All right, under extensions, find the Bicep. And then once you click on this, you will see this panel on the right side. And on this panel on the right side, you need to make sure that, let me click on Bicep again. Okay, you need to make sure that this checkbox is actually checked, because this is an experimental, and you need to basically enable that. It doesn't get enabled by default, and in order to have this option, make sure that you have latest Bicep extension installed. And if you don't know how to install latest Bicep extension, there's a couple ways. One of them is you need to use Azure Bicep. Let's look into the help. Okay. So Azure Bicep has very few, only few commands. If you want to upgrade that, you need to use this command here, upgrade. Basically, what you would do, you would go and say AZ Bicep upgrade, okay, like this. And if you press enter, it will check the version of Azure Bicep in your machine. And if you don't have the latest, it will give you an option to upgrade to the latest Azure Bicep version. Okay. So let's say we enabled this Bicep language. That's first thing to do. Okay. Second, you need to make sure that you have an Azure account extension. Azure account. Okay, this one. So you need to make sure that you install this extension, because this extension helps to uh, pick up the subscription where you are going to deploy your Azure Bicep. Okay, and the way how it works is basically you can also use the command palette, and here once you install that, you should have this option Azure like sign in. sign out, sign with device. So you would use these options in order to go ahead and make sure that you sign in into the and set up your Azure account extension in a way that you selected your subscription and tenant and you know where you are deploying. Okay, so this is very important to take care of before actually right clicking and saying deploy your Azure Bicep file. All right, and sometimes you would have to sign out in order uh, and sign back in order to make that work, because I experienced personal that problem and I don't want you to struggle with that. Okay, that's the reason why I'm actually stressing this out. So let's deploy this. Okay, and but before deploying this, okay, let's say right click here, deploy Bicep file. So once we say that, as you see, it's asking for the subscription to be selected. I'm going to use the most recent one. Now it's asking me for the resource group where I'm going to deploy it. So in my case, I'm going to select the my demo 15. Okay, this one. And it's asking for parameters. So parameter name here, actually, it has default parameters. So I'm going to use select the none, because I don't, and then look here, guys. So once we say that, all the selections that we did are happened here. So in output, no parameters file was provided. Okay. And if you go and switch to the Azure Bicep subscription that I have here, so let's refresh it. Know that's my demo 15, it's here. And let's go look into deployments. So it says that, actually, let me make this refresh. So let's see what happened there. Deployment succeeded for, so it says that it just succeeded the deployment from the file that we have. So let's go and check that out. Usually it takes a little bit of time before reflected on. So let me go back here, resource groups, and make sure I refresh everything. Go to my demo, refresh everything here. And as you see, actually, I have it here, right? So if you look here, let me just make sure it's enabled. So here, as you see, we have actually two storage accounts deployed. They were not there. One of them, and if you look into the names, you would see that it has the name Global Azure Dev and this one. So how we know that this deployment actually succeeded? We can also click here on the deployments options. Okay, and as you see, it says 23 seconds ago there was actual deployment and it actually succeeded. This was the actual deployment that actually made the deployment. We don't have any outputs. This is where it shows. So as you see, guys, on my demo 15, after the deployment, we have these two storage accounts deployed and they are there. And if you look into the names, again, they have this global Azure name. And the other one also have test SDG, it's GL Azure, all right? And from output, you can see that did you succeed or not. I hope that makes sense and you know how to deploy it now. The other way, if you don't have this, let's say, you don't want to deploy with right click and saying deploy Bicep, what's the other way to do it? Is actually, let's do that, right? So let's go ahead and if you want to do that the manual way, as I show you, or through the console, then what you need to do is, let me show that example actually. What you need to do is, let's go and make sure that we actually delete everything which is inside this resource group, because I'm not using them anyway. So let's delete. It will take some time, but it should succeed. Execute commands. Okay, so let's refresh this. Okay, it's all gone now. We don't have any files here. My demo 15. So in order to deploy this file, I have actually, let me we need to go back to the terminal here. And of course, after that, I would suggest to go under the scripts file, click on global Azure. So here you have some commands that can help you. So in order to do that, what we are going to do is first we are going to make sure that we have AZ deployment. Then we need to define that's a group. We are going to deploy this into the Azure resource group. Then we need to type the create. And then after G, which is a resource group name, we need to type the name of the resource group. In our case, it's my demo 15. This is the name of the resource group. Let's put it there. Okay, and then we need to navigate and show the file which we want to deploy. In our case, it's under the modules, right? Let's look at it to be sure. It's under the modules. Oops, what happened here? Let's save, make sure nothing changed. Okay, so it's under the modules folder, and then it is a storage dot bicep, right? So now I'm going to, if you remember, guys, I mentioned you about the pre-flight validation, which is going to make sure that, for example, in our case, it's about putting this -c at the end. Let me show you again. So if you want to make a pre-flight validation to check, what's going to be deployed or what's going to change in your resource group, you can always put that -c and press on enter. And once you do that, what will happen is Azure Bicep is going to go ahead and take your storage.bicep declaration, convert that into ARM templates, and then compare that with what's inside the my demo 15 resource group. As we saw, we went and wiped out everything from that my demo 15 resource group. That's why it's empty. And here's the response back saying that from our pre-flight validation, that -c that we put there, it says that, hey, these new resources are going to be created. And as you see, it is going to create these two new storage accounts. So we will say, okay, type yes here if you want to continue with the deployment. And usually storage account deployment goes very fast. So in probably in less than 15 seconds, we should see that happening. So while this deployment going here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the resource group and click here on refresh, and then go into the deployments. And as you see, this shows that a deployment by the name storage actually is in progress and says succeeded. So if I go to overview, click on refresh, it didn't appear because it takes some time for Azure portal to bring it back. But if I switch back to the to my deployment, you see everything's actually finished. So it's finished deploying. So if I go back again to the portal, okay, we are back in the portal now, and click on refresh. Now I see that one of the storage accounts is deployed, but the other one is not there yet because it takes time for the portal to bring it. And now you see both of the storage accounts are actually deployed. So we succeeded in our deployment using the terminal. Okay, and if you want to know those commands, again, under the global Azure, under the scripts folder, you have this global Azure deployment AZ CLI. You can use sample here, okay, to do that. And the first samples on top is actually all about logging in and making sure you are authenticated to use your Azure subscription. Okay. All right. That's it. I'm going to switch back to the demo where we were. All right. And I'm going to show you a couple. So I will show you Bicep Public registry as the next. We looked into deploying the Bicep file from Visual Studio Code. New updates on version 0.06 are about the management group resource ID function. There's a force to download. There's a flag -- force that help you to get the latest version of the Bicep from the registry. It's from public registry or from your private registry. And plus there's a more efficient JSON loader function was introduced in version 0.6. So let's look at some of them. But before going there, this is kind of a reminder slide about enabling deploy a Bicep file from your Visual Studio Code. Okay, and as you remember, I mentioned that you first need to enable that, and second thing is you need to make sure that your Azure account extension is configured and it is working. Then this is the Azure Bicep Visualizer. If you never use that one, I will show that one next. And then we'll look into public registry demo, okay, and then we'll actually finalize our demonstration. So let's go back to the Visual Studio Code. Okay, that's where we are. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what is that Bicep registry, okay, Bicep Public registry. There is a sample here that's using the Bicep Public registry, which I'm going to actually deploy that into the code. It's a sample 16 deploy, all right? And what it is basically, as you see, it's using the naming public.samples. And where I know, how I know that this sample actually exists is because there is actually this public registry site. Let me bring that on this and put that into the chat so you know where it is. But that link is also going to be a part of the that link, the repo link, which is Azure Bicep Registry modules, are also going to appear on the on my Bicep repo, where I'm actually going to upload the presentation and the links. Okay, so you can check it there as well. But this is the one that I'm talking. So here, as you see, this is the Bicep registry maintained by Microsoft and Microsoft employees. Under the modules, if you go and look into the samples, you can find some samples that you can go and play with them, okay? But under the modules, there's a development where you can use certain virtual network related deployments, okay? And you can also use, in addition to network deployments, you can also use the availability set related Bicep modules, okay? And you can check to see what they are. It shows them come with the parameter names, what type of outputs it support, and plus some samples how you can use them, all right? So that said, I'm going to show you the simplest that you can go, which is this deploying public registry as a Bicep, okay? And here what we are gonna do is what it's supposed to do is just hello world application, the simplest you can do. And output should say that hello world and then greeting. And in the greeting, we should see Bicep developers. So in our case, we can say global Azure 2022 developers. Okay, let's change the message here. And what we are going to do, we are going to deploy this public registry and see how it works. So if you see a squiggly line under this, it means that this module is not cached, it's not downloaded yet. And once you put that there, Bicep and Visual Studio Code extension will make the attempt to go and get it and download into the cache. But what is inside this hello world, right? This is just a deployment resource. And to show that to you, I'm going to say right click and let's first of all save this. Right click and say, build Bicep file. So this thing should generate a JSON representation, as you see here. It has metadata as it's supposed to be, and it has only one resource. And it has an output of that resource where it concatenate the output with hello world, as you see here. And the resource is just, it's a deployment resource. There is nothing in it. And it has the parameter. Okay, so let's look how it will look like if we deploy that into our Azure subscription. So let's right click and say deploy Bicep file. You can choose your own subscription and then folder where you want that to be deployed. So in our case, let's do that to the same folder, which is my demo 15. And we would say, okay, use the default parameters. In our case, it's global Azure 2022 developers. Okay, let's see what happens here. So it says no parameter file was provided. So once it is deployed, we should see deployment succeeded information here. We are waiting for that, and it's a bicep. Okay. Or here deployment succeeded. So we see that it succeeded. What we are going to do, we are going to switch to the Azure subscription. All right, it's a demo 15. I'll say refresh. And how you would know that it's actually succeeded, you go to the deployments here, okay, and you see hello world. That's where you need to click. This was our deployment. It happened a second ago. And here in outputs, if you go there, it has some output. And let me actually show that output. So it says hello from Bicep registry. Hi, global Azure 2022 developer. So this was the parameter we put in, and the rest was concatenated information that was added. Okay, and you can see that from that JSON file here that that's what from the compilation you would see that expected information was hello from Bicep registry, and this is where our message is supposed to be, right? So that's how it's actually know that the message should say what the message should say. In our case, it was this message. All right. I hope that makes sense. So let's actually wrap up what we looked into in our Bicep presentation and updates. We looked into what's the Azure Bicep. We looked into why to use that, what are the evolution and what are the versions in Azure Bicep, what are the updates that came with 0.5 and 0.6, and we looked into certain demos to get some hands-on understanding. Okay, if you want to learn more about that, here are the resources I would suggest to look into. First of all the demos can be checked in Learn Bicep GitHub. You can use this QCR code to get the URL. Then you can also get some video course from LinkedIn Learning if you have subscription, and watch the first look Azure Bicep first look course. Next, there's official Microsoft Azure Bicep project can be reached here, and of course this great resource from awesome Azure Bicep repo. Go and check them out. And finally, I would like to thank everybody for joining my session on Global Azure 2022. And thank you everyone who joined. And I'm going to stop recording at this moment to take the questions and make sure that we address everything for this session. All right, so I'm stopping the recording.